Tim, thank you so much for doing this. I
Hi,
appreciate it.
Tim. How are you,
Happy
Tim?
I'm good. Two Tims in one
Yes,
session. Good. I'm good. Happy New Year. How was your New Year Christmas festive period?
it was nice. It was quiet.
Yeah.
I'm so busy and running around all the time. I kind of like it to be, sometimes to have some quiet time. And, people
Yeah.
were otherwise occupied, so I was able to kind of just mind my own business. It was nice.
That's good. Good. Family time?
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit.
Okay. So so the whole podcast on this is based around practicing and, how do we get better as players. So one thing I always ask people is, what does practice mean to you?
Oh, that's a good question. It's an interesting question. I tend to think of it in a wide way.
Mm.
So I feel like the practice of being a musician is a constant one.
Yeah.
And for instance, if we say, "Oh, you are a doctor. What kind of practice do you have?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a different meaning than sitting in the room and trying to get better.
Yes.
So at this stage of my life, I don't have I have, put it this way, my focus is on more the life of music as a practice than practicing to get something.
I see. Okay.
If that is clear. Now, I still will do what we think of as conventional practicing if I need to learn something or
Yeah.
I need to improve something that isn't working for me. And that's
Okay.
often informed by my performance life and my playing life.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I like to think that I don't really practice to get something or to become better.
Okay.
I practice to be more in tune with what I have to offer.
Right. And do
And
you
that
think
might be just something of, a guy who's been playing for 50 plus years,
yeah.
talking about that and sort of trying to see how the word reflects on how I actually see it now rather than what I did when I was 17.
Yeah.
Because what I did when I was 17 was, maybe a little bit more like running drills and practicing this and that to learn how to do this and that,
Sure. Well, that was going to be my follow up is if you're practicing now, it seems more of a holistic practice and practicing more to be, not to sound like a hippie, but more as one with the guitar rather than like, I need to be able to play my scales at, 120 BPM at,
Yeah,
that kind of
right.
thing.
Yeah, I think
And
you're.
I guess that's something that just comes with, like you said, it comes with time and it comes with age.
Yeah, your question has the answer built into it, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
And the way I look at it, I mean, I can tell you, I like to put the guitar in my hands before I have any responsibilities.
Yeah.
In my day, and then maybe after my responsibilities are done. So my responsibilities include a lot of guitar playing, but so that I can do that well and be tuned in and connected to my body, and also getting my my ears and my mind and my fingers sort of in a cohesive state.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I will often do something like play until I'm not playing what I'm conceiving.
Okay.
So the way I believe it occurs, at least the way it happens for me, is I intend to play. I hear some music. I can hear it just inside of my mind.
Right.
I can imagine it, or I can play it on the guitar. And I want my playing of the guitar to be as close as possible to what I would imagine myself doing in a particular situation.
Yes. Okay.
So if I think of a song that I'm going to play, I might imagine myself playing it in my mind. And then if I were to play it on the actual instrument, I want those things to be cohesive. Okay. So, and then in a way, the imagining and the playing is a simultaneous activity.
It's a bit like I remember is it George Benson? There was a quote that somebody said, "Does George Benson sing what he plays, or does he play what he sings?" And the
Yes,
answer was yes.
yes,
And
exactly.
I think that's
Exactly.
just such a wonderful place to be in. And I mean, so how did you work on that?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is that's
Okay,
how I practice. So let's say I'm going to play a blues,
okay,
and I say, I'm hearing this. Now, what I played just now was pretty much how I would have played it in my mind if I hadn't the guitar in my hand.
okay,
And so, as I'm imagining the music, I'm intending it in both on both fronts, in the imagination and the real, to the point that they become one thing. They don't. It isn't two separate simultaneous things. It's just
yeah,
one big thing. But the way I practice with that is if I'm really tuned in and I begin playing and I play to my satisfaction, I feel honestly that I'm playing what I'm conceiving, then I continue. And
mm,
as soon as I don't play, as soon as what comes out of the guitar is different than what I intended,
mm,
I might stop and investigate what happened.
okay,
I might say, oh, well, even if that sounded good, it wasn't what I really meant to play.
yeah,
And so if I had been a composer writing it down, what I ended up playing was not what was written.
right, okay,
So I'm going to look into why I did it or what it meant. What did I intend?
mm,
Did I just get lazy, or did I not know where that note was, or did I let my fingers do the walking? And not that letting your fingers do the walking is a bad thing. It's just
yeah,
that I want to take the practicing time to get closer and closer and closer to the ability to play what I'm hearing in the
mm.
moment. All
And I
right.
think that's yeah,
So improvisationally, I want to be able to um, uh, have access to on the instrument the things I'm imagining without
yeah,
having to stop and figure them out. But if I can't do that, I stop and figure them out, and
okay, all
I
right, I
and I
see, yeah, yeah,
inform and I sort of inform the 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 guy that tells my fingers where to go
yeah,
if they're listening, where that thing, that sound or whatever lived.
right,
And
okay, yeah, yeah,
usually it's a combination of playing a lot of things that I've played before in
mm,
some fashion, and I'm in familiar territory. But then if I'm really on it, I start imagining things that I really want to hear, but I may not necessarily have in my bag of tricks. And I'm wanting to see if I can get to them spontaneously.
yeah,
And if I can, I'm happy. If I can't, I'm not unhappy. I just fear I don't know how to do that or had a
mm,
momentary lapse, and I
yeah,
fix that problem. And then I teach myself something new, perhaps.
okay,
Uh, You know, um, I'm a real believer in that the music comes from inside of our minds and is then translated outside of the instrument rather than
hmm,
the other way around. And I think sometimes it's a little more external than that.
yeah,
Like you learn something and you play it, and maybe eventually your mind catches up
hmm,
to what it is. But I like to flip the script and make sure that when I'm playing in most situations. Sometimes I'm playing somebody else's music, and
yeah,
I have to play what's indicated
yeah,
somehow.
yeah, yeah.
But generally speaking, when I'm practicing, the goal of my practicing is to become increasingly capable of playing the music that I hear in my head.
Wow, I mean that I think that's it's just such a higher level of learning, which is like you said, it's the thing that comes with age, and I guess just sitting down and practicing that as a craft rather than or as well as practicing things like scales and reading and ear training is just something that you need to adapt or one needs to adapt into their playing.
Yeah, I imagine it's like this: if you have a whole library of books
Mm,
that are on various subjects and things you're interested in and part of what you love to do, and you only read, um, five of them.
mm,
And then you've got all these books that could be uh, available to you, but
yeah,
you're not reading them. You're not opening the cover.
yeah,
So the way I perceive it is I've been listening to music since I was about 2 or 3 years old. And the way my mind captures is almost everything I've ever heard or listened to carefully is in there. It's in my memory bank, so I can
hmm,
play whole records,
yeah,
you know, and yet I can hear them So I want to be able to play that. Like if I think of Dexter Gordon on the record Go, and I listen to I imagine a particular song that I like. I heard it on the radio 3 or 4 days ago, and I say, oh my God, he did a line with fourths and in and out. Oh, I really loved that. And I could hear it when he played it. I knew what it was, but then I got to get it on the instrument and find out what it is. I may not go back to the record and transcribe it, probably won't.
Okay.
But because I feel like the part of it that got me is in there already. And I just have to find it. So I just spend some time and find stuff,
So do you have perfect pitch?
Nope. No? I have very, very good and very well practiced relative pitch.
Okay.
And I've worked on being able to call the notes by their interval number.
Okay.
In relationship to the chord of the moment.
Okay.
Flat 3 3 5 6 1.
Okay.
So when I hear ba 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 do bop in my mind, there's also a numerical name for those things.
Okay.
And so if I hear somebody do something, I can more quickly find it.
Oh wow. Okay.
But it's not perfect pitch. I fortunately don't suffer from that. Because I know that people who have it suffer quite a lot with it.
Go into that. Suffering with perfect pitch. Why do you think it's a suffering?
Oh, because there's a couple of things about perfect pitch and absolute pitch, which are two different things, which can cause suffering. One is if you have really, really good pitch, sometimes you can identify notes, but you don't understand exactly context.
Okay.
And sometimes as an improviser, it's probably better to understand context than the actual pitch.
Okay.
And of course, we work our way toward being able to have a good a relationship with the pitches that actually get played, like I described, knowing the interval numbers and being able to name something and have a sound that relates to the name, all that kind of stuff. Okay. Now, if somebody's got very good, like perfect pitch or absolute pitch, anything that's out of tune according to the way that they've structured it in their mind is going to be bothersome.
Yeah.
Right? With absolute pitch, might not enjoy music that has a different pitch structure than the one that they've adopted in their mind, which is oftentimes based on a piano.
Right.
There's a lot of music that doesn't really come from the piano that might be foreign sounding. Also, the perfect pitch, as I understand it, because I do have a couple of friends who have it and use it, is it changes over time. And
I didn't know that.
I don't know this person, but I read about a person who was a cellist, and their pitch became so hyper clarified that they could hardly play anymore because they could not get their playing to be as in tune as their ear and their mind wanted it to be.
Wow. Okay.
And so I think that there's like, for instance, let me give you an example. It's probably a really good idea when you're walking down the street to have your eyes open and your ears open and be able to perceive the environment around you to an extent that you can stay safe and that you can maybe step out of the way if there's some situation or whatever, right? Stop it and not get run over by a car. Be able to know your way around so you can find the things you're looking for. It's probably a good idea to have all those things.
Yeah.
But it's probably not a good idea to be bothered by every single creak and sound and there's a siren 3 blocks away and it makes you really distracted and hurt in some way. So overly sensitive people don't benefit from their hypersensitivity necessarily. There might be certain situations where it's very applicable, other situations where it becomes overwhelming. And so I think that perfect pitch might be a kind of hypersensitivity that can sometimes, not always, can sometimes turn into a level of suffering.
Yeah, no.
And of course, maybe if you ever get a person with perfect pitch on your podcast, you can ask them about that because maybe
I will do. Okay, so in the realms of getting better, you mentioned that it's not really something that you strive for in terms of technical ability, but it's more a case of something that you strive for, like you said, just becoming one with the instrument.
Yeah.
How would you suggest? Well, I mean, what's a good way for people that maybe haven't done this to get started?
Okay. Well, I'm instead of saying I want to get better, I might say I want to get closer.
Okay.
Because closer is something that has value, closer to an ideal, maybe, or closer to the experience, more intimate with the experience,
Yeah.
less separated. And I think sometimes learning external material, as we all have to do, whether it be scales and arpeggios or timing or technique of one kind or another, or taking something from knowing how to do it slowly to building up the endurance and the ability to do it more quickly, and all these kinds of things, the practical things that we need to learn. Sometimes that process can externalize all of that stuff to an extent that makes us psychologically and emotionally feel disconnected from it. Like we got to go and get it. We don't have it. We need to achieve it because we can't do it. And I've found that's usually not true. But our ability to perform a task, I think, is made more difficult the more separated we have ourselves from the task.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So if I set up a thing that says I'm going to learn how to play this passage of music, and I'm going to learn how to play the first two bars of it today, and then I'm going to learn how to play the next two bars of it tomorrow, and I put myself on a timeline, and I say by the end of the month I want to be able to play it at 200 beats per minute.
Okay.
I've basically separated myself in a number of different ways from something that I can describe as a goal, and this is conventional. Right?
Yeah.
It's the tendency, right? Do this, do this, do this, reach your goal. And I think that behind that is a kind of problem in that we think we aren't there already, and we need to get somewhere that we aren't. And a lot of the psychological business that goes along with that includes I'm not good enough, or I want to get better so I will be, I don't know what, acceptable, loved by everyone, whatever you want to put in there. And so, but if we're closer to it, the closer we can get to it, then the process doesn't have linear time. It doesn't have to be bound by linear time.
Right. Yeah.
So, for instance, I'll give you an example.
Go on.
If I go stop and I can play it and I learn it. I heard somebody do it, or I imagined it, and I go, and I'm gonna love that. I'm gonna get in there. I'm gonna love that at that tempo. I'm gonna just be as into that as I can. I'm gonna love every aspect of it, one note at a time, 10 notes at a time.
Yeah.
And then by doing that, I'm gonna become intimate with it. I'm gonna become knowing of it.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not thinking of trying to get better to my goal. I'm just trying to say, what is this? I'm letting my curiosity and my love of adventure and all of that rule the day. Then I've explored it and I played with it. I'm playing, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I watch a little kid play with something. They don't worry about how long it's going to take them to get it.
Yes.
They start playing it,
Yeah.
And so I know that may seem impractical on the surface to what a musician who's learning and has practical rationales to do. I got to learn this by Friday because I'm playing it with this band or in this group or on this performance. And that's true. You got to do that, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes in doing all of that and making a kind of academic pursuit of music, and that we learn it like we're supposed to learn our multiplication tables or whatever, I think we can miss out on something that we expect that we'll be able to turn on later. Flow, creativity, joy, excitement. We can't necessarily forget about all of those things when we practice, because there isn't a switch that just, if we practiced in a very even keel, practical way that's all timered and this and that, then we sort of think we're going to go to the gig and flip the creativity switch.
Yes.
And I don't think it works that way. I think that we end up playing how we practice.
Yep.
Ultimately, we need to practice in a way that's healthy for us.
Yeah.
that gives us joy, that is not on a necessarily, always at least, on a timeline of efficiency. Efficiency in practice. I have many, many people coming to me as students over the years. I've seen so many thousands of people as students just because I've been doing it for a very long time. And one of the things that's pretty common is that someone will say, all right, I feel like my practice is scattered and I really need someone to kind of hold my feet to the fire and put me on a practical schedule that linear march through. I just want to learn all about, arpeggios.
Right.
I want to get my arpeggios together. And nobody can do that because people aren't that thing. People are not the thing that they want to. They aren't linear. People aren't linear things. They aren't tending to be on a tight step-by-step schedule. We have to digest, we have to muse, we have to understand the mysteries and ponder the mysteries and swim in the waters of it all. we don't march through. I've seen so many people who march through a program and a year later they don't remember any of it, they can't do any of it. They passed all the tests, but they don't really embody it. And then what do? They say, oh, I wasted all my money on music school, or I need to go find another teacher. And I think that in some ways it was like they were force-fed and never digested, weren't given an opportunity to digest because the timeline was just too tight. And I know that's almost a heretic thing to say, because there's so much invested in music school programs and any kind of program, right? But I don't know. That's just my thing.
No, well, one of my questions is, what is your take on music education today? I mean, with things like YouTube, and I know you do a lot of the True Fire courses. Anyone has access to essentially free education, and on top of that, you just got so many music schools that just keep popping up everywhere.
And on the other hand, they'll take all your money, so you can get it for free, or you can get it for go into debt for a lifetime.
So what's your take on music education today?
Well, I mean, certainly it needs to occur. There are certain things about music that can be taught. And there are many other things that need to be learned. Whether or not they can be taught or not, I'm not convinced.
Okay.
So what I noticed is that people tend to teach the teachable things. And either ignore or struggle with the less tangible things.
Okay.
So teaching tends to be about, and now I can't say I've been to every music program in the world or anything. So, but what I see is I see students who come out of music academies or music programs and haven't, connected all the dots.
Okay.
Right? They know all the formulas. If they're a good student, they may have learned all the formulas. Play this scale over that chord. Do this, use this technique or whatever. But very often there's a digestion period that either hasn't happened yet, which leads me to be hopeful, or was never really addressed. The fact that you're going to learn this material, you're going to have it, you're going to understand it, but then you're going to work on it for a very long time before it comes to fruition, because that's the way it works. We're talking about being creative, we're talking about invention, we're talking about exploring our own personality, because improvisation is, if you want to say it this way, improvisation means being honest about yourself as a musician in the moment. And if you're not being honest, then it may not be satisfying. But if you are being honest, that might be a letdown as well. Right? So
well, I think one of the things about improvisation is, certainly today, with everybody filming everything being put on social media, you're almost not. I feel like some people, even myself, afraid to make those mistakes because it's going to go up online, and then you're going to be judged really harshly. So you play everything very safe, but then you don't get to express yourself. You don't get to be more creative. You don't think, oh, fuck it, I'm just going to try this line and see if it works. If it works, then that's going in my bag of tricks. If it doesn't work, I can just ditch it.
I know what you mean. I think that can have impact, and the ability to play something multiple times, maybe hundreds of times, to get it to a point of spectacular execution, to post 1 minute of music on Instagram or something like that. I think that, we might think, oh, well, that's horrible. But I don't know. Did Paganini do that? Did he practice his incredible virtuoso pieces over and over and over so that when he stood in front of an audience, he could do this amazing thing? I don't know, but I suspect that it's not terribly different from a virtuoso piece of any kind.
Yeah.
In the realm of improvisation, there's also there are a number of factors. So and it's not clear cut. So for instance, I don't think most audiences want to hear somebody practicing something that they don't have a relatively high efficiency already with, right?
Yeah.
So the idea that as an improvisational player, I'm going to get up in front of people, that might include a camera, and just pull stuff out of my ass, forgive my French.
No, that's fine.
Then, over and over and over all night long, and blow everybody away and be brilliant. I mean, I suppose that could happen, and I suppose there are audiences that are willing to accept a certain amount of treachery and danger in their own listening experience. And but I think that maybe that would be a selective audience that might not be your average audience, And of course, what is your audience? How are you selecting your audience? Are you playing at a popular place, and where mostly the audience is going to be people who are there wanting to hear conventional music played nicely, or I don't know what. There's just so many different possibilities, You're playing for 10 people in a loft and they want to hear you go crazy, and they really want to hear chances. They want to hear danger and excitement and unexpected. Well, then maybe it's not so much about messing a lick up or playing a line and not being able to do it, as believing in your ability to do whatever you conceive of in the moment and accepting what comes out as the truth.
Yeah. And do you think these oh, go on.
I was just going to say, so a lot of it has to do with expectation. If I have an expectation that something that I play is going to match up with my conventional idea of what should go there, and I mess it up, that's one thing. But if I have a different attitude which says I am in the moment of playing, and whatever I do is the truth about me in this moment, and I'm going to accept it, and hopefully everybody else will too, then there aren't any mistakes.
Yeah.
Then it's just the only mistake I can make is not believing in myself enough to put it forth with conviction.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so it's hard to know. It's hard to know because everybody's at a different station in their life. I mean, if you're a player at a certain stage in your life and playing wrong notes, quote unquote, notes is a problem for you, and you can't remember how to play over particular changes, and so you play notes that sound wrong to you, then it might be a valid concern to say, well, what are the right notes and how do I find them, and how do I execute so I can get some of those right notes?
Yeah.
But then if you continue after you can clearly play all of the right notes and not have any problems, then the problem becomes, how can I keep myself involved in this process besides just painting by numbers and getting it all right? How can I actually find something that's invigorating and exciting and fun and powerful? And that might mean letting go, probably does mean letting go of my narrow conception of right and wrong.
Yeah.
That I worked so hard to develop. So it could be anything, man. It really is. It's really open, and because we're dealing with individual truth, not universal truth.
Yes. I mean, it's one of the wonderful things about music is that it's always open to interpretation, and its ability to kind of speak what the emotion. It's the emotions that you're going through, or you're feeling. Can you get those out via your instrument?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And approval is a part of the audience's approval, our own self approval, the imaginary people we want to approve of us
Mm.
that don't really exist or don't
Yeah.
care or whatever. Um, all of that is at play.
Mm.
Um, but if it starts to control the activity, then I think some further exploration is necessary. You
Yeah.
know, and it might be interesting for you or for your listeners to listen to a venerable player of any instrument
Mm-hmm.
over the course of a long career. Now, sometimes, with Charlie Parker, we only get the beginning and then it's cut off.
Mm.
But let's say someone like Joe Henderson, who's a tenor
Yeah.
saxophone player, who lived a very long life and had highs and lows and everything in between, but continued to play until relatively close to the time of his death. There can be some very interesting observations that can be made
Okay.
when you listen to someone over a long arc,
Mm.
and you get to hear the energized young person, you get
Mm-hmm.
to hear the jaded middle aged person, you get to hear the older person who's having to adjust for a lack of physical abilities,
Yeah.
perhaps because the body deteriorates and suddenly, like how does somebody deal with their body deteriorating? I mean, I remember
Yeah.
seeing Jim Hall, like he was all bent over. This was the last time I saw Jim Hall, great
Okay.
jazz guitar player. He was all bent over. He was clear, maybe 8 songs in the course of the evening, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
a few more, but all of them were songs I'd been hearing him play since forever. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he just took the songs that he really had been playing for a long time. He'd gotten so deep into My Funny Valentine
Mm-hmm.
and Someday My Prince Will Come, etc.
Yeah.
And he was not in good physical shape.
Mm.
Chops wise, he was very deteriorated.
Yeah.
But I gotta tell you, it was the most emotional. It was the best time I'd heard Jim Hall probably 6 or 7 times before that at all different phases.
Yeah.
So, and a couple of times at the peak of his abilities, and then this last time where he was an old man,
Mm.
but it was so moving and so poignant for me that it was actually my favorite performance I ever heard of him,
Wow. I mean, that's
because
when.
he was embracing the fact that he couldn't do what he used to do. He
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
being honest with himself in the moment,
Mm.
rather than and then hearing somebody else who can't play like they used to play, but they're still trying to do that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
They're almost trying to be a version of their previous self, and then they aren't able to do it, and so there's cutting notes and
Yeah.
interrupted phrases and all this other kind of stuff, which is frustrating to hear.
Yes.
So it's a long arc. Everybody gets it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's just like the evolution of the musician. It's
Yeah,
just, and I think like if you're still honest with yourself and you're that age, I think that is definitely the right thing to do. It's like I can't do the chops that I can, but the emotion and the intensity is still there. So how do I get that out?
right, right. And
That's
and you may discover, and I think this is true probably of most musicians, that because the body is deteriorating over time, then the wise ones get to the essence of what they're trying to say and what they've been trying
yeah,
to say. They get to the essential elements.
yeah, yeah,
So rather than playing 20 notes to get to the thing, they whittle it down to just 3 notes. Or
yeah,
I mean, that might be silly. That sounds kind of cartoonish to my ear as I say it, but you get to the essence of something, and it might be the notes you play. It might also
mm,
be what's the essence of the feeling I'm trying to convey.
yeah,
Now, if I can stop thinking about notes and start thinking about or feeling in the realm of a feeling of what I want to say,
mm,
then the notes don't have so much power over me or anybody else. I can deal with something besides just the notes, just the
Yeah.
music school stuff, you know.
Yeah. So I saw, I don't know if you saw the Pat Metheny interview that Rick Beato did. Did you see that?
I think I did. I don't think I watched the whole thing,
I think
although
yeah.
I watched a good bit of it.
I
Yeah.
saw a snippet of it, and I think this is going back to what you said about, teaching the things that are teachable. And he said that you can go to school and you can learn about rhythm. You can go to school and you can learn harmony all day long, but there isn't a school in the world that will teach you melody.
Yeah, and I also think there isn't a school in the world that will teach you who you are.
Okay, so
There
what?
isn't a school in the world which will establish for you an ethos about what you want to say and how you say it and how to keep your composure in the moment, in the long arc of a career. The only
Yeah,
thing that can teach you that is introspection, I believe.
yeah,
And then maybe wise counsel
mm,
from someone who's walked that path as well. But you have, even if that person, wrote it down and handed it to you, you've got to be open to learning from it and
yeah,
and accepting wise counsel. And oftentimes we aren't, because we are too hung up on whether or not everybody thinks our notes and our chords are the
yeah.
hippest.
So what's your approach to learning melody?
I listen to the song.
Mm.
I might look at the
Or
music
if
as
you're
well.
doing it, if you're improvising, you're thinking,
If
right,
I'm
how
improvising,
it's all just heart and soul.
I want to. It goes back to what I was saying before. There's an old quote, and I think it's valid. Charlie Parker said, "Master your instrument, master the music, then forget all about that shit and just play."
Yeah.
Well, I've heard a lot of people say, "Well, Charlie Parker says to forget all about that shit and just play."
Mm.
Okay, and that's only half of what he said.
Okay.
The first part of what he said is necessary to understand and endeavor so that you can actually do the second part. You can't do the second part if you haven't done the first part.
Yeah.
So you can't forget all the shit and play if you haven't mastered your instrument and the music.
Yeah.
So we have to deal with the practical, and then we have to live in a world of sound rather than in a world of numbers and letters and concepts and formula.
Yeah.
So I want my melodies to sing beautifully, whether they're fast or slow. I want them to be clear. I want them to make sense to me and to my listeners. I want them to convey something, preferably something that I'm in touch with at the moment, and beauty. I want to convey beauty, whatever I conceive of as being beautiful.
Yeah.
Right. And those things are my guiding principles. I let go of all that language, and because I've learned how to live in the world of sound. I want all that stuff to be there. I want that, the filigree and the notions of this and that, but I can't do that if I don't know, if I can't sing and play the melody as it was written, as it was conceived. So then if I improvise, I want that to be as sensible and as beautiful and as based in the song as I can. I want my melodies to be based in the song that they're being inspired by, rather than in an obstacle course of harmony. The obstacle course of harmony is known and it's behind, but it's not always, for me anyway. Now someone else can do it differently and sound brilliant, and I don't suggest to say that there's only one way to do it. But for me personally, I'm trying to find I'm trying to get closer to it,
Yeah. Okay. So I also have to ask you, you had lessons with Ted Greene, is that correct?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to study with Ted.
So how long were you? Well, just tell us about Ted.
Oh, okay. My elevator speech. Ted was a beautiful guy. He was a deeply musical guy. He was also a deeply thoughtful guy. He was willing to do incredible investigation to learn about something. And he had an encyclopedic ability to remember the things that he taught himself or that he learned. And he was a completist.
Yeah.
And he wanted to know the beginning, the middle, and the end of something rather than just one little snippet of it.
Okay.
He would reverse engineer things that he discovered, and he would find out, oh, if I know how to do that on this particular sound, how would I do it on that particular sound? And I remember there's a recording of Ted Greene and Lenny Breau, and it's sort of a fly on the wall experience. And it was very interesting because Ted really admired Lenny. In fact, at that time, and probably after that time too, Ted thought of Lenny as the greatest guitar player in the world that the world had ever seen.
Yeah.
And many people agree with that. But Lenny was more of a poet, and Ted was more of a scientist poet.
Okay.
Like in the Enlightenment times or in the Renaissance, there were these great scientist artists. Like Da Vinci comes to mind, right? He was an incredible artist, but he was also this incredible scientist. And Ted was like that, whereas Lenny was more of a poet, strictly. And so Lenny would say, "Here, Ted, let me show you this cool chord. I learned it off of Bill Evans' record, and it goes like this." And he'd play the chord, and then Ted would then respond in a very gentle way, not a know-it-all way. But he says, "Oh, I love that chord. Yes, I think I discovered it by playing this scale." And then he would play the entire harmonized scale that contained that chord.
Okay.
Because he had done that much research, whereas Lenny seemed content to be able to just see it as a kind of beauty in and of itself. Yeah. Ted wanted to know where it came from and what its source was. So that was the kind of guy he was. He was a gentle man.
Yeah.
For the most part. He had a lot of quirks.
As we all do.
Yep. And but I don't know if I've ever met anybody who said he was mean to them or didn't know what he was talking about or was a jerk or didn't pay attention to them when they were visiting with him. I mean, he was the kind of guy where you really felt like he was listening to what you had to ask or say. And unfortunately for me, oftentimes I reflect back in my mindset in those days, because I was quite young when I went to see him during the period of time I was seeing him. I was a young up and coming musician filled with all the kind of bullshit that we can be when we're in our 20s or something.
So you're in your 20s when you're having lessons?
Yeah.
Okay.
And our 20s and I guess 1983 through 86.
Okay.
And the thing is you didn't need to go see Ted every week.
Yeah.
Or every month even. He would give me a stack of work based on what I asked him about, and I had a tape of it or something. Yeah. I stopped taping it, which was dumb, but I did. And I would work on it until I had something to ask him or something to say about it or some kind of development, a digestion of it, and I would try and get another one. Ted was wonderful. He still resonates in my heart and my mind very strongly.
I'm sure. I mean, he's such a prolific
not
musician.
A day goes by where I wish I could, where I don't wish I could call him on the phone and ask him this question or that question.
Okay. I mean, I think that's such a wonderful way to teach people the idea that they come to you with either X problem or they're looking for some kind of solution, and you just stack them up with a bunch of things and go, there you go away and do that, come back when either you're done or come back when you're ready.
But though, having said that worked for me. But I know there are people that went over there every 2 weeks.
Okay.
And he was also willing to do that if he felt like it was what you needed.
Yeah.
I think Ted, as a teacher, was very insightful about what the student could benefit from, rather than just what he wanted to teach them.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's another thing I appreciated about him, is that he had a level of kindness and respect for others that allowed him to really teach the person rather than the concept.
Okay. again, it's quite a very holistic way of teaching, which I think is.
Yeah, I suppose you could say that.
I think it's something that isn't really done anymore. Well, I'm sure it's done, but it's not really prolific. I don't think. I think
Yeah,
there's always the idea of. I mean, I teach in schools as well, so it's weekly lessons every day, or every once a week, 30 minutes, just rinse and repeat.
yeah, yeah.
But I think there's a lot of, certainly with children, I think there's a lot that need that consistency, because
I believe so too. I also think that we teach the way we learned,
yeah, yeah,
and I think that for instance in Ted's case, I don't think he took a lot of lessons. I think he had enough wherewithal to uh, follow through and do the work on whatever kind of revelations. He was an incredibly intelligent person,
mm,
and he would buy a music book and argue with the author in the margins because he so if you've been through a basically an academic type of education,
mm,
and then you go to a music school, famous one or not, and you go through and you maintain that academic principles of learn, test, perform,
yeah,
learn, test, perform, whatever, then that's going to be the way that you're most comfortable teaching because you succeeded at learning that way.
yeah,
And the people that don't succeed at learning, they don't get the degree at the end, so they're not necessarily going to say, I'm a such and such graduate
yeah,
and I'm going to be a trusted teacher now. So they might have to find another way of teaching that isn't like the model that they attempted because they fell out of that. And so I think that there's no one way to learn. There's no one way to teach.
yeah,
I think people who think that are maybe not being broad-minded enough.
hmm,
And my take on it is that I'm not teaching music.
yeah,
I'm teaching a person.
mm,
And what the person needs is something that I need to be aware of and learn about. And then I need to find a way to teach that person a subset of things that are going to help them get where they either want to go or who they might not even be able to imagine where they can go yet,
yeah,
but so I think that remembering that you're teaching a person, you're not teaching concepts. You're not
mm,
just teaching a set of stuff that lives out over there. You're actually teaching a person because the
yeah,
person that's in front of you is the one that has to learn it,
yeah.
you know?
I know.
So,
Yeah, I often I'm not necessarily give myself a hard time, but if you're teaching 30 children, most of them, let's say they all start at the same time, and you get halfway through the school term, and you're thinking, well, child X can do A, B, and C, but child B can't do A. So they're still struggling with A.
yes.
Um, and then you kind of think, well, they should be able to do that because I've taught them all roughly the same thing. So I take them through the same sort of program. So they should all be at the same
Yeah,
level. But
yeah,
it's then you think, well, no, because everybody learns differently. Everybody's different.
yes.
They've got different stuff going on. Some people have, they have some physical difficulty to get their fingers around, and others just seem to just drop in nicely.
Yep, yep.
So yeah, the idea of teaching a person is something that's, I've never kind of thought of it like that.
And it's true that in academia there have been many studies that are using teaching models that are commonly thought of as being in schools,
Yeah,
right? And I think that it's not unusual for um, a certain type of person to need to hear something many times
hmm,
before they can understand it and grok it, as it were, and maybe get to doing it.
mm,
And some other person might be able to hear about something, or be shown something one time,
yeah,
and they're off to the races.
yeah, yeah,
But they're all in the same group,
yeah,
right? And in some ways, the benefit of individual teaching, because I always enjoy individual teaching more than classes,
yeah,
is that you can tailor the instruction to the capacities of the student if you're willing to and observant enough
mm,
to discover what they are.
yeah, yeah,
And you have a broad enough and a flexible enough palette of information and a way of dispensing that information
mm,
and aren't threatened by a situation that doesn't let you just do your thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I remember one kid. I don't teach kids anymore, but I can relate because I did before.
Yeah.
And he came to me. He was very into guitar, but I could not teach that kid to do one thing. And because it's not that he wasn't physically capable, he just didn't want to do anything anybody else was telling him.
Right.
I noticed this. He had been told by his parents, you know, he's very smart, probably heard a lot from his parents how wonderful he was and how capable he was. And, you know, because this was in an era where children were being raised in a way where they were hearing a lot of positivity from a particular kind of parent.
Yeah.
And certainly not all of them, not everybody did. A lot of people heard equally the opposite of that. But this particular kid was hearing a lot about how great he was and how smart he was and everything. So I just stopped trying to tell him how to do anything, except I said to him, okay, what you're going to do is you're going to write a song. You're going to write a melody. You're a composer. You're not going to be a guitar player. You're going to be a composer. And I showed him how to, you know, scratch on a little tablature, write down, make up a song and bring it back next week and play it. And maybe I'll play some chords while you play your song.
Okay.
And oh my God, he took off like a rocket.
Wow.
And then pretty soon he said, oh, if I'm going to play this stuff that I'm coming up with, I better learn how to play some stuff on the guitar. So then I should be able to show him how to do something that would help him play his song.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, okay. Now I can't do that with everybody.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, I had to be flexible enough with that kid to be able to do that.
That's
and he's still playing music now. You know?
Amazing.
As an adult. You know, this was about 20 years ago. So.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. And so if going back to learning, if you had to do it all over again, is there anything you'd do differently?
Oh, that's an interesting kind of question, because if I had to do it all over again, would I do it any differently? Presumes that I know how I did it, and that I would bring that knowledge back with me to the beginning, and then do something different than what I did.
Let's say you can do that. Let's say that's a feasible.
I don't think. First of all, I don't think it's a rational question. It's an interesting thing to speculate about, but what you're really speculating about is what would you do now to maybe improve on what you didn't do well before.
Yeah.
And I think that's a valid question. So if I say, well, the way I learned had gaps in it, and the things I learned have left me with deficiencies at the stage that I'm at now, how can I mend or make up for those deficiencies? Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
But I know what you mean.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to try and play along.
Okay.
If you say, in hindsight, what would I have done that I didn't do, or what I would have not done that I did do a lot of, or something like that? I can't think of anything specifically glaring, because I would have had to have a different situation for things to have been different. For instance, I couldn't afford. I was a young kid in a large family, and I didn't have a parent who was willing to pay for music lessons. Yeah, the means weren't there, so I had to be self-taught because that was my only choice. I didn't have the option of getting, into a program and learning, correctly from somebody, right? Right. So all of what I learned was what I sought out. And so as a result, I what I didn't know, I didn't know. Yeah. And, but I think it would have been very interesting for me to have been guided by another in the early stages, because I think that I suffered well into my young adult life as I was trying to be a professional musician. I suffered from lacking, perspectives that I would have gotten if I had had somebody telling me what to do early on. Yeah. Even if it had been playing saxophone in the symphony orchestra and learning how to play with others. Yeah. And learning how to blend and learning how to focus my attention on a simple task rather than trying to do 2 or 3 other people's tasks at the same time. Yeah. Things like that. I took a lot of lumps early in my career because of erroneous notions that I had developed in my mind.
Okay.
That somebody could, perhaps, if they had cared enough, save me from that, because I would have taken those lumps when I didn't know I was taking them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? So that's probably the biggest thing. In terms of looking at where I am now as a player and as a musical person and a musical thinker and a professional player and a professional teacher, I think what I am now is a direct amalgamation and result of all of the struggles and stuff that I went through. And
Yeah.
so in some ways I wouldn't change anything,
Yeah.
because I'm very, to the extent that I can be self-aware, I feel like I have accepted lots of challenges and overcome difficulties, etc., and have come to a place where I feel like I'm the kind of musician that I want to be. So I don't feel like I'm disappointed in myself or striving to be something that I'm not. That you heard. Making some very esoteric and beautiful points.
I know, and the damn internet cut us off. We've got some really horrendous winds over here and some bad weather, so I think it's playing up with everything. But yeah, I mean, from what I ascertained is essentially, where you are now is a blend of all the mistakes you've made and all the accomplishments that you've achieved, and it's brought you to the place that you are now. And
right, you're right. So I think the way I my capping phrase on this was that for me to want to do many, many things differently would inherently mean that I'm not satisfied with the musician that I am now.
Yeah.
And of course I'd love to have 50 more years to keep learning and keep, making mistakes and finding new ways and all that. But I'm satisfied with the result of my haphazard life and training and all the things, because I think they make me what I am, and my goal in music is to be as authentic as possible.
Yeah.
And that means I have to accept all of
those mistakes. Yeah. Well, I think that's a wonderful point to end it on. So I just want to say again, thank you for your time. Thank you for sitting down and talking shop and chewing the fat.
Oh, it's very nice to meet you, Tim. I hope we can stay in touch.
We'll do. I mean, I noticed. I meant to mention this, that you were over here. I think it was the end of last summer. You did
Yes, I was over there in May.
In Farnham in May. That was it. I almost bought a ticket and came down, but I think I had a run of gigs that came in, and it was.
I wish you had. So I'm hoping to come back. By the way, speaking of that, I wanted to mention that this is my new book. It's on guitarvivo.com. Yeah. If you could put a link in it, that'd be great. And it's a second book. The first book is a melodic chord dictionary. So it's a new take on the standard chord dictionary, and that the chords in the volume are organized by the melodic content, the melody note of the chord, rather than simply the type of chord. And this one is a follow-up to that called Melodic Chord Phrases, and it's beautiful passages that are chordal in nature.
I could listen to that all day.
Oh, good. Thank you.
I did get the book, and we're in the middle of moving house, and I've put it in I've got like 30 guitar cases, and I put it in the pocket of a guitar case, because whenever I go off to teach, I like to bring a book with me. If a student's sick or they miss a lesson, I can pull out a book and just work through some stuff. And I cannot for the life of me remember which guitar case I put it in.
It'll turn up in another 30 years or so.
So thank you for writing it. Thank you for all the content that you put out. I know it's appreciated by a lot of people. And again, thank you for your time. I really do appreciate it.
And I hope to see you again. And very best of luck with your podcast and also with your musical life. And let's stay in touch so we can check in every once in a while and see how things are going.
Will do. Absolutely.
All right. Take care.
All right.